Hello, it's Lorna, and today we're going to be doing another painting using oil pastels as a resist. So today we're going to be using watercolor and oil pastels. I have a few colors. I have a couple shades of brown, black, and green. I'm using my paper here is watercolor paper, and it's taped down so that it does not buckle. The paint that I'm using today is from Walmart, and it is just watercolor cakes, but any watercolor will do. If you don't have oil pastels, Crayola crayons will work great, or any crayons. So for this tutorial, I'm going to be using all of the colors of the rainbow, and I hope that you choose colors that you like. You can make your tree be in the fall, in the spring, you can have flowers. So I want you to think about the colors you're using, or you're welcome to follow along with me. So the first thing we're going to be doing is we are going to take our black oil pastel and we're going to draw a tree. Now, I'm not using a reference to draw my tree, but you're welcome to draw your tree out in pencil first and then go over it with the oil pastels or the crayons that you're using. You must use something for this that is not water soluble. So the oil pastels are going to resist the water because the oil in them resists the water on a scientific level. The wax in the crayons will act as a resist. If you think about any candles, if you get them wet, the water does not stick to them. So we need something that resists. If you use markers, if you use something like a alcohol-based marker might work. It might bleed a little bit. A permanent marker might work as well, but again, it might bleed a little bit. Those are alcohol-based markers, so they are not water soluble, which makes them permanent. So if you wanted to go that route, you could, but I highly recommend trying the oil pastels. So here I'm just loosely drawing in my tree, adding some branches and trying to make it look natural, but my main goal here is to have lots of segments and sections to fill in with the watercolor. So lots of little pockets to fill in with different colors to give it kind of an abstract, kind of washy, wispy feel. Maybe it's a windy day. That's the kind of vibe that I'm going for. If you want, you can do more distinct shapes like circles, or you could do flowers and things like that, or fruit. Maybe it's a fruit tree. But this technique you could also use and not do a tree at all, and you could just do abstract shapes and then fill them with the colors that you want. This style of painting is not something that I have invented. Lots of people have done similar, and I'm sure they've done trees in this style as well. So if you're interested in looking at what other people have done in this style, you might want to look up oil pastels or resist painting. So I'm drawing another tree, and I'm doing this one a little bit further back. So you'll note that my tree is not touching the bottom of my paper, my second one. And that's because I want it to look further back. One way to make things look further back is by overlapping. So putting one object slightly in front of the other visually, and that's going to create depth. I'm going to have some hills that run behind the first tree and above the second tree, which will also create some depth. So I'm starting to get a little bit of oil pastel all over the place, so a little hack or tip that I can give you is that you should put something down so that the side of your hand is not picking up all of the oil pastels. Typically, I would work from left to right on my paper so to prevent the oil pastels from getting all over my hands. However, the way that I'm filming for YouTube makes that quite difficult because I have my camera set up above me and the thing that it's on is to the right of me, so it makes it very awkward for me to put my hands there. Plus, when I work from left to right, you can't see what I have on the right hand side. So I'm just going to go in and finish all of these branches, and then I'm going to smooth them out. And you can smooth them out with a variety of things. You can use a tissue paper, you can use paper towels, you can use folded up squares of paper. Folding it is really important when you're using paper so that you can give it some structure. And you'll see how I fold it here. One of my favorite things to use is my finger. I feel like the finger is the most effective. You get nice friction, you have great control, and you can actually feel where the oil pastels are. They're kind of a creamy texture. Not everybody is a fan. You can wear gloves. I'm not a fan of gloves, so I am going to just use a piece of paper towel, and then later on I'm going to smudge it out with my fingers because I think it gives it just a little bit cleaner of a look. If you're using crayons, you want to really build up the pigment on your paper so that you don't see any little white bits of the paper shining through. So if you see now, before I've blended it out, you see that there's a lot of little things in my oil pastel, little white bits of paper showing through. I want to make sure I get rid of all of that, because wherever there is white paper showing through, the watercolor can also show through. So you want to be mindful of that. If that's a look that you want and you want to put some watercolor over those little bits, you're more than welcome to. So now that I've have all of my tree branches defined and smudged out, I'm going to add a little bit of root definition, and I'm also going to draw some little hills. I'm just going to do like a bumpy kind of grass situation. It's not going to be big giant rolling hills or anything like that. So I'm going to go in with my greens because I don't want to use my black for this because I want it to be a little bit softer. Now, things that are darker in my image are going to be closer to me. So the lighter objects are going to be further away. So in the back, I want to use my lighter colors, and in the front, I want to use my darker colors. So I'm going to go in with my lighter color in the back, and then I'm going to do some dark olive green in the front. And my roots are going to be black because I want them to be with the tree. And I'm going to smudge those out just like I did the tree. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up some of my dark blue watercolor paint. So I'm going to wet my brush with the pan. And I want this to be pretty dark to start, and then I'm going to show you how to lighten it using the same blue color. which is why watercolor is really great, is you have the control over the opacity or the darkness, and the amount of the amount that you can see through it. So I'm going to lay down some heavy pigment in the corners here. I'm going to do that because I want the shadow of where my sky is to be towards the corners of my page, almost like a vignette. And then I'm going to add more water without picking up pigment. So I'm just adding water, just water. And that's what's helping me thin out that pigment. And you can see my brush strokes here and a really defined point where all of my water steps are. And I'm just going to blend those out. Just blending those out by going back and forth into those colors. And you're going to get a nice smooth ombre. You want to make sure that your brush is wet when you're blending, but not sopping wet. You don't want puddles on your paper. I'm going to continue with that and just shade the tops of my cells. And I'm only doing my right side right now because this is where my sky is going to be. And all of my branches are going to be kind of like windswept and blown to the left. So I'm just defining the tops of my trees right here, where some of the sky is poking through. And I'm going to go in with my water and add that in. This process of painting is what I'm going to be doing overall. I'll talk to you a little bit about my color selection and why I'm choosing specific colors, but for the most part, the painting technique is going to be the same. I'm going to start darker and blend down with lighter colors. I might choose another color, or I might just add water to thin it out. And I'm skipping all over the place because I want to give some of my colors time to dry in between blending or adding additional colors. If I go in with this dark blue and then I immediately add a green on top of it, it's gonna blend and make a teal, which is great, but if I want distinct colors, like a blue and a green, I'm gonna wanna wait a little bit before adding my other color, just so that that water can have time to seep into the paper and dry. So I'm going in with this cool green color. It's kind of a blue-green color to start with. And I'm just going to blend it out. I'm going to go in with a little bit of my cool yellow as well. So if you see on my pan on the left-hand side, I have a few different oranges, but down there's like a dark yellowy brown color that's like a yellow ochre. Right below that, you'll see that there is a darker yellow. It's almost an orangey yellow. That is a warm yellow, and then right below that, that's the cool yellow. So when I say cool yellow, that's what I'm talking about. It's the one right above the white. And it's cool because it has more of a green tinge to it. And the other one is warmer because it has more of a red tinge to it. I'm going in with my cool colors because my green is a relatively cool green. And I'm actually warming it up a bit, making it a lime green. But adding cool colors with cool colors is cool. It makes it so that no color has too much contrast and they don't stick out. If you were to put a purple right next to a yellow because they're complementary colors, they will be very separate. Not only are they complementary colors, meaning that they're opposite the color wheel, they also, one is a cool color and one is a warm color. Typically, purple is considered a cool color, even if it's a warm toned purple. So I'm just going in with a little bit of my light yellows towards the bottom. I did a wave. I didn't fill in the bottom there. I did a little wave shape because that's the bottom of my tree. So keep that in mind when you're making your tree, is that you want to make sure you define the bottom. Or your tree can go all the way down to the bottom of your hills. That's fine. But I wanted my tree to be a little bit above my hill. So I'm mostly laying out my greens first. Then I'm going to go in with some warmer colors because I imagine this to be a nice fall breezy day. I know that it's spring right now, but fall is one of my favorite times of the year because it's quite cool and there's breezes and there's pumpkins and apples and just all the things that I like to do. Goats. I like goats. So I imagine this being, you know, maybe Fog Willow Farm or something with all the little goats. So I am just going in with this teal blue and I'm gonna blend it up because this is a part of my sky. So you see the darker blue on the right. I want to blend this up into that darker blue because it's part of it. Even though it's separated by trees, this is still the same sky. I want it to be a little bit teal so that it blends in with the trees, but then I want to make it more blue again so that it blends in with that right hand side. And you'll see that I go up into it, kind of blend it down. And I have it a little bit dark towards the bottom here, so I'm just gonna take a piece of paper towel and dab out some of that white or some of the color so that you see some of the white underneath and blend it some more. So while it's still wet, you can remove some of the pigment. And again, I just want it very kind of airy. Maybe it's, you know, gonna rain soon. That's kind of how it looks outside today, which is maybe why I'm feeling like this tree landscape is a little bit dark. All right, so I'm going in with my warm tones now. I have a true orange, kind of a reddy orange. I'm going to go with that on the side. So just like I blended the dark blue into the light blue, I'm going to blend the dark orange into the light orange and almost into yellow as well. And I'm going to use my warm toned yellow for this. And that's because I want it to stay warm and I don't want my oranges to get cooler. So I think adding the pop of orange in here is really going to help because orange is a nice complement to the green because red is a complementary color to green. So I really think that it's going to help add that contrast and just some visual interest. So I'm going to finish this whole thing up in that way. I'm going to do my hills in the same manner, just blending out my colors. I'm going to add some shadows in my hills as well. So I'm going to let you guys sit back and watch. So I've finished filling in my tree leaves, and I've added some yellow highlights to the top of my mountains. These yellow highlights are not going to stay yellow. I'm going to tone them down with other colors. But I want the bright yellow to shine through because it's going to look like a dramatic sun is hitting in certain areas. I want to make sure that I use black to tone the areas underneath my trees, because in nature, even though this is not a realistic painting by any standard, it's an abstract painting, but the shadow is going to be directly underneath the trees. So you want to make sure that you have some darker areas underneath your trees because less light is going to get in underneath your trees. So I'm going to add in this black, and it's not going to stay black. I'm going to go over it with greens and with reds to add some dimension. And again, I'm keeping my warmer colors towards the bottom, and that way I can have just a little bit more contrast between my bright blue sky. If I did green instead of this kind of yellow and orange scheme, it would look nice, but I feel like the contrast between the yellows and the blues is just so much more, because this whole painting is about bold pops of color, lots of contrast, lots of gradients. So that's kind of what I want to do here. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching and that you try it on your own. If you like this video and would like to see more, please like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day.